Hello everyone. I wanted to get in touch with everyone at EC Parish just to mention two things in particular. So if you didn't want to read that long email, here's a video version of the same message. The first thing, as you know, last night Boris Johnson spoke to the nation, told us about this new lockdown that we're going into. And so the question is, what should we do with our church buildings? Shall we keep them open, or do we need to close them at this time? And the second thing I wanted to mention to you was, it comes from the Thessalonians letter, and it says this. It says we should encourage one another and build one another up. So a quick question I'd love to ask you. Are we doing what we can to encourage you and to build you up? And are you encouraging other people and building them up as well in the life of church? So those are two things I want to mention briefly to you now. The first is about church buildings. The latest government guidance, so we're January the 5th today, says that we're allowed to keep the church building open for some very particular things. So communal worship, public worship is allowed to take place, weddings and funerals and so on. So I got in touch with the PCC last night and asked them, shall we close our buildings or shall we keep them open as we're allowed to do? Just because you're allowed to do something doesn't mean that you should necessarily. As you can imagine, I've had a huge number of replies, as well as a number of other people from church life who've got in touch with me as well. Thank you for all your really helpful feedback. The PCC have seen all of the feedback that I've received, so they know how people are thinking and feeling about this just as much as I'm aware of in church life. People mention things about doing all that we can to not spread the virus. That might be a good reason to close the buildings. People talked about not only doing the right thing, but being seen to do the right thing. People talked about going the extra mile to protect the most vulnerable. But then people also talked about the benefits of the interpersonal connection, even if we're not allowed to hug or share the peace in the normal way. Just being in the building at the same time as others, even for a quiet service in which we wouldn't sing. There's a real benefit, lots of us feel, being in that space, just seeing somebody, even if we can't touch them. Of course, there's the importance of gathering as a church family, and there are many other ideas as well. And so, although there are some members of the PCC, and perhaps of the wider church family, who would like to see us close the building at this time, what we've decided to do is we're going to make the building open on just one occasion in the week for the time being. We're going to add a few extra health and safety bits and pieces. So we're going to ask that you pre-book. We're going to only have one queue of people for Holy Communion rather than two, just to simplify that, and a number of other things. So Sunday mornings, telephone service, 9:30 and 11, they'll all be online for the time being. But Wednesday, 9:15, we're going to carry on in the building as the guidance allows us to. We're going to increase our health and safety measures, but we're going to keep on meeting together in person at 9:15 in the church building on a Wednesday at this time. Now, if you think that I've made the wrong decision, or if you think there might have been a better way to orchestrate things, do get in touch with me. I'd love to hear your feedback on that issue. Now, on the topic of feedback, that's the other thing I'd love to talk to you about. Being a member of the church family, it's about much more than our church buildings. It's all about what God wants to say to us. It's about us going the direction of Jesus, about us becoming disciples and making disciples. The buildings are only a small part of church life, aren't they? Last year provided a really rapid training course for me on how to get much more out of the internet, online things, all things technical. I learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes as well. I think lots of you lived through them, sorry. But now that and I think lots of you have learned an awful lot, it's time for us to start putting those lessons into action. So here's a request from me. If we've learned how we might be able to do church better in this ever-changing context, boy oh boy, it's changing fast all the time, isn't it? But if we've learned some things, how we can use messaging and videos and whatever it might be better, would you share with me what it is that you've learned? In the next day or two, I'm going to send out a questionnaire. And the questionnaire is going to have some open-ended questions for you to respond to. Now, the answers to those questions I'm going to share with the PCC and the MLT, the Ministry Leadership Team. And we're going to look at those answers, and together with some ideas that I've already got, and the ideas and the answers that you provide, I'd love us to come up with a really good way forward for how we can encourage one another and build one another up in the days ahead. As always, discipleship groups are super important. If you're not already a member of a DG, discipleship group, why don't you get in touch with Sue? 07502 427 693. You can rewind it if you missed the number there. Get in touch with Sue and join a discipleship group if you're not already part of one. They're the best way to connect with a really great group of people in church life. I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you for listening to this video. The letter is there if you wanted to read it in more detail. You can watch this video as many times as you like. I don't suppose anybody will. But I want to encourage us. We want to use our buildings. We don't want to use our freedoms to hurt anyone, but we do want to use our buildings to bless people. And we think that by keeping the building open, just that one occasion in the week, we think that's going to have a real benefit for a lot of us in the coming season, especially some people who are feeling particularly lonely and perhaps disconnected from other parts of society. And likewise, that question about feedback on how we can find a new way of doing church life together going forward so we can encourage one another and build one another up. Thanks for listening to my little message. Keep in touch. God bless you. Bye-bye.